Dr. Chapman. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for doing this with us. I appreciate you taking the time out of your morning to do this because I do realize that you are a very busy person. So thank you.
That's my pleasure. No problem.
So this is Dr. Kevin Chapman, everybody. He's a nationally known psychologist, and he's going to talk to us today about some very, very important subjects. And before we start, Doc, tell us a little bit about, your background and kind of why you do this and how you got into this.
Okay. Well, my background, I have a PhD in clinical psychology, and so I'm a clinical psychologist in private practice. And I have a multidisciplinary practice where we have psychiatrists that work with us and for us. We even have pediatricians, even psychiatric nurse practitioners. But all in all, I'm really interested in anxiety and related disorders because more people have anxiety disorders than any other type of condition. So with that said, only a third of those people receive treatment, which is pretty telling. 40 million Americans in the world who have an anxiety disorder, but yet only a third receive treatment, yet they're very treatable conditions. So that's something I've always been intrigued by because it represents a challenge, but also it's something that's honestly very fun and innovative to treat.
And why is it fun and innovative to you? Because you're right, it does seem like half of America has some form of an anxiety disorder, but for some odd reason, we just don't want to either connect to it or even believe that it exists, or better yet, not even look for help.
Well, at least from my perspective, I think most people who say they treat anxiety and related conditions, you of course have a stereotypical talk therapy session. Well, the most innovative way to treat anxiety and related disorders is called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is essentially the gold standard way to treat it. And the reason I like it so much is it's rational and it's logical. It makes a lot of sense. Like most things in life, if you think about it from a CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy lens, it just makes sense. It's a rational approach, but also it's unconventional in the sense that if, say, you're afraid of elevators, well, you don't just talk about being afraid of an elevator. At some point, you have to help clients confront fears related to an elevator, or if it's a bridge, or if it's claustrophobia. So these are all things that have a real world application, and many clients are attracted to that because you get to leave the office, honestly, and interact in different environments because you essentially go to the real world to help people overcome their anxieties and their fears. So those are just some examples, but nonetheless, those are some of the reasons why it's innovative and intriguing from my perspective.
Okay, Dr. Chapman. So let me ask you this question. Is there a different type of group of people, culturally speaking, that actually get psychiatric help? Do they believe in it? Is there a particular group that just kind of goes with it or doesn't?
Well, Mona Lisa, historically, ethnic minority and people of color in the United States have historically shied away from mental health treatment overall for a number of reasons. Historically, there have been mistreatment and such and distrust in communities of color in the United States because there have been studies in the past that have mistreated and abused ethnic minority folks in the United States, like the Tuskegee experiment, for example, with African Americans, like essentially not getting consent to treat African Americans with syphilis, so to speak, and injecting African Americans in syphilis is one example, and then not telling them and not giving them the remedy for that and the penicillin. So that's just one of many examples, but historically, non-Hispanic white Americans, so white Americans tend to be the partakers of mental health treatment in the United States overall historically. But with that said, ethnic minority clients in the United States have tended to shy away from it due to a stigma associated with mental health and mental illness. So for example, if you take many communities of color, it's going to the pastor, going to a church family, going to a family member, another relative, so on and so forth, because it's too sensitive to divulge personal information to many people. Now, certainly that landscape has changed, but what we know from research is that cultural match is extremely important. So if you have someone who isn't even an ethnic minority per se, but someone who has a cultural match, who can relate to you from a cultural perspective, who's a mental health provider, that actually influences treatment outcome, believe it or not. So with that said, cultural match is extremely important, which we've gotten a lot better at overall as mental health professionals and understanding those concepts.
That is interesting. So basically you're saying that people of color, because of maybe the way they've been raised or whatever the case may be, sometimes don't partake in seeing getting psychological help and psychiatric help because of that because they don't think it works, or is it? What do you kind of? Can you expound on that?
Well, I'd say that there's a concept, and of course you've probably heard this, Mona Lisa, in ethnic minority communities called healthy paranoia, where it's important not to divulge too much personal information to yourself because of the potential of abuse. Right? If someone hasn't proven themselves to you that they're trustworthy, why divulge information? Historically, that's been the case with many ethnic minorities in the United States for a lot of reasons. So with that said, as part of it is, yeah, that won't work. But the other part of that is, oh, you don't understand me or my experience. So how can you, being an expert, help me with me being an expert of myself? So there's this bi-directional relationship of, well, I don't have a cultural match with you. I'll tell you what works generally from a mental health practitioner's perspective if they're not culturally proficient. But then you have the individual client who is often misunderstood because they've had negative experiences with people who aren't culturally matched with them. So therefore there's this negative dance and this dynamic, so to speak, of, well, if you can't help me, why waste my time?